Hello and welcome to the Killorn Show. We have a very special topic for you today. We are discussing Lesson 77, Inequalities with Negative Coefficients. There are some very special rules for inequalities that equations do not have. So the first thing we're going to do is discuss those rules. On the next page here we have 6 is greater than 5. Well, I have a very bossy board and it is telling me exactly what to do. Very nice. We are going to multiply both sides of this inequality by a negative 1. So over here we're going to multiply this side by a negative 1, and we are also going to multiply this side by a negative 1. Simple, right? You think. Negative 1 times 6 is negative 7. Negative 1 times 5 is negative 5. Now on a number line, if I were to plot it, we would have negative 6, negative 5. Remember, our numbers should be getting greater moving to the right, and they are. And they should be getting smaller. Okay, not smaller, but the values are getting smaller. This is something that is oftentimes very tricky. If we're at a negative 7 here, you may think this is a simple step, but many, many mistakes are made here. This is a negative 6. This number is a larger number, but that means with a negative in front of it, it is a smaller value. So look at this inequality statement. Is negative 7 greater than negative 5? If you did not know, the answer is no. It is not, okay? So that's where our rule comes into play. When we multiply or divide by a negative, hint, hint, write that in your notes. Hint, hint, rewind, write that in your notes. You need to make sure that you take your sign and you flip it. Okay, if you don't flip it, you're going to end up with the wrong expression. You're going to end up with a false solution, which means if you check your answer, it won't work. Okay, so moving on, let's try some examples. We're going to solve and graph negative 3x minus 10 is greater than 8. Okay, so our first step here, I'm going to just rewrite it just so you can see it in Mrs. Killorn's beautiful handwriting. It makes everything so much easier. Okay, so here we are trying to isolate x. Always ask yourself, what is happening to x? Well, Mrs. Killorn, it is being multiplied by a negative 3 and subtracted by 10. And then Mrs. Killorn will tell you, you need to get rid of the numbers that are not connected to x but on the same side of x. So we are going to add 10 to both sides. When we add 10 to a negative 10, they will zero out. We will be left with a negative 3x over here. We did not add or multiply or divide by a negative, so our sign stays the same. And we are left with an 18 over here. What else is happening to my x? Well, we have to look at it. It is being multiplied by negative 3. My inverse operation would be to divide. And we are going to divide by the number being multiplied by x, negative 3. And if we divide one side, we must divide the other side. Okay, so we did that. Our 3's are going to cancel out. On the left side, they turn into 1's. Our negatives cancel out, turn into 1's. Okay, and what's that you say? We divided by a negative? Flip your sign. Okay, so now we flipped our sign to make sure we didn't forget. X is the only thing left on the left side. 18 divided by a negative 3 is negative 6. Box your answer. Okay, so you should have a solution of your inequality. You should also draw your number line. In the middle, we will place negative 6, which is our solution. We will place numbers that are larger than negative 6 to the right of negative 6, and we will place numbers smaller than negative 6 to the left of negative 6. We will then graph our solution. We need to circle negative 6. Remember our rules for less than. If it's less than or greater than, our circle is open. If there is an equal sign, if there was an equal sign underneath it, here it would be filled in. So all the numbers, x is less than less than negative 6. So which numbers are less than negative 6? You need to look at negative 5 and negative 7, and you should confirm that negative 7 is definitely less than 6. So there you have your solution. Okay, any questions on that problem? Well, you'll have to ask me tomorrow or the next day or the next day. Over here you can see I justified each of my steps. There was a given. Okay, I wrote the statement. That's right up here. Okay, then I added 10 to both sides. There's that step. Divided both sides by a negative 3. And I flipped the inequality symbol to keep the truth value of the inequality. So, you're done. Great job. Let's move on. You guys are supposed to tell me great job too, but I can't hear you. I know you're thinking it. Okay, this one gets a little bit more complex. So I am going to rewrite it here. We have negative 5x minus 3 in parentheses greater than 5 times x minus 3 outside of parentheses. There are a few different ways to do this problem. I am going to try to give you the easiest way to complete this problem. The first step that I would take here is, because there is multiplication happening on both sides, and because they're being multiplied by a common factor, I'm going to take and divide by that factor right away. So if you see right here, I'm going to divide both sides by this negative 5 over here. Okay, you said, what? A negative 5? Make sure you flip your sign, because we are dividing by a negative. Even if we multiply by a negative, we also have to flip that sign. Over here, your negatives cancel, turn into 1s. Your 5s cancel, turn into 1s. And over here, your 5s cancel and turn into 1s. You're left with your negative. So now we have x minus 3 is less than, a negative is still out in front, x minus 3. So what we have to remember on the right side of the inequality is that we still have that negative out there. So we do need to use distribution to get that negative out. So we're going to distribute that right away. Negative x plus 3 is what that changes to, because our negative goes into our x and into our 3, or negative 3. Okay, so our next step here is to add x to both sides. So when we add x to the right side, those will zero out. Negative x plus x is 0. X plus x is 2x. We'll rewrite our inequality with 3 left on the right side. After we do that, we are going to add 3 to both sides. When we add 3 to both sides, we end up with 2x is less than 6. And your last step is to divide by 2, because x is being multiplied by 2. Your 2's will cancel. X is less than 3. Now when you're doing these problems, you can stop the video at the beginning and try them on your own. See if you get the correct answer. It would be great practice and a great idea. I'm going to show you one more way to solve this problem up here. Negative 5 times x plus 3, which is, I forgot, greater than 5 times x minus 3. There's one other way to solve this problem, and that would be to use your distributive property first. So I'm just going to go down here. I guess I'm not able to extend my page, which doesn't help. So I'm just going to erase this step up here, and we're going to work our way upwards. Okay, how does that sound? So here, the distributive property could have been utilized first. So here we could have distributed our negative 5 into both parts here, and we could have distributed our 5 into both parts here. So we end up with negative 5x, okay? Remember to distribute that negative, minus 15, which is greater than 5x minus 15. Okay, so when we did this step, we have now gotten our 5's distributed. Okay, so our next step would be to isolate our variable. So we want to get x all by itself. So in order to do so, we are going to add 15 to both sides. These 15's will cancel out, and we will be left with a 30 over here. 5x plus 30, keep in mind, and a negative 5x over here. When we keep going, we want to get the variables. If you notice, there is a 5x over on the right side and a negative 5x on the left side. We need to get rid of that 5x from the right side and bring it over here with the 5x that is over here. Okay, once we do that, we will now have a negative 10x, which is greater than 30 because these will zero out. Your last step in this way of doing the problem would then be to divide by your negative. And if we divide both sides, remember I'm working upwards so it looks a little funny. The negatives cancel, the 10s cancel. X is left here. What? We divided by a negative? Flip your sign and you end up with a negative, oh, not a negative 1. We would do 30 divided by a negative 10, which would be a negative 3. Is that what we ended up with the first time? I hope so. Otherwise, we got problems. We also need to graph this inequality. See, Mrs. Clorn's work gets a little messy, guys. So you got to make sure that you're staying on track with me. Smaller numbers this way. Negative 2. Sorry, larger numbers to the right. Smaller numbers to the left. Okay, we are going to circle the solution. And there is no equal sign, so it's an open circle, and it's all the numbers less than negative 3. So we are going to keep on moving this way. Okay? Either way, we will get the same answer, so it does not matter which way you complete this problem. Solve and graph 50 minus 50x. Is less than 30. Okay, 50 minus 50x is less than 30. Okay, here the x is in a different order. May cause a problem to some, not to us. We like challenge. Okay, here's your x. We're trying to isolate x, so we got to get rid of whatever is not connected to x. That would be your plus 50. If there's no sign in front of it, it means it's positive. So we need to subtract it, which is exactly what we're going to do. Positive and a negative cancel out. We are left with a negative 50x is less than negative 20. When we subtract those, they are different signs, so subtract them, take the sign of the larger number. And your second step, which is going to make you done, is to divide by a negative 50. What? Divide by a negative, you say? Flip the sign. Negatives cancel, 50s cancel, x is by itself. Negatives will cancel there as well because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. We could take off some zeros and look at that. X is greater than 2/5. Easy one to graph? Not really. We're not going to graph it today. If we did, we would just make fractional parts. So on here we could go 2/5. What's bigger than 2/5? 3/5. What's smaller? 1/5. Okay, get the idea? All right, check your justifications to make sure that you did all the correct steps. And we rewrote the given. We used the distributive property. And we subtracted, oh, that's from my last one. So my slides must have gotten mixed up. Make sure you don't do that on all your justifying and your problems. All right, that is the end. Make sure that you complete your practice set problems before they are due. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for watching The Clorn Show.